I have to take my dog for a walk, so I figured this would be a good time to knock out my video for U.S. history, so here we go. Today, the topic that I'm going to talk about is Reaganomics, which, as we read about, was the economic policies of Reagan, which was another word for supply-side economics. We already talked a little bit about the repercussions of it in class, so I'm not going to talk about it in the video. Really briefly, I'll just say it caused our nation to go into massive national debt compared to what it was at before, and it also was very good for his political career because it accomplished exactly what he wanted, which was to reduce the size of government, which was what the people wanted, but it wasn't exactly good for our economy. So we already talked about what its implications were a little bit, so let's talk a little bit about why it didn't work and exactly what it is. Essentially, supply-side economics, like the book said, is when you give tax cuts to the very wealthy, and the idea is that the very wealthy will use that money to make better products for cheaper, and it will improve the standard of living in the middle class because everybody will be able to buy these better, cheaper products, and then so many more people will buy them that will actually increase tax revenue, and the money that we lost from the tax cuts will actually be saved in the long run, and we'll actually be able to reduce a little bit of the national debt because of all the money that we gain from the extra tax revenue because so many more people are buying products. Now, in theory, I was thinking that makes a lot of sense. Why doesn't it work? And I had to do a little bit of research, and here's what I found. I found that it turns out, like we talk about in class on a multitude of occasions, corporations are not made to provide a product or service to the people. That is a side effect of their primary purpose, which is to make money for the private owners. A corporation is not a tool through which the government, or in turn us, can better our lives. It is a way for a private individual or group of individuals to better their lives. So when the government gives massive tax cuts to the corporations or the owners of these corporations, in many cases, they don't turn around and use it to improve their product so that it improves our lives. They use it to give themselves salary increases or massive bonuses, and that's where the stratification of the social classes comes from, because the people who have the tax cuts use that money to make themselves richer, and then the national debt just spirals out of control in that way because there's tax cuts, so they're getting even less revenue and nothing's coming in. And in what I think is one of the more ironic things that I've heard, lots of those tax cuts that we're using to reduce the national debt are actually that money that the very wealthy people are saving is actually being reinvested in foreign interests. So somebody completely making up this scenario, no idea if it's ever happened in this exact context, but the owner of Walmart might get a massive tax cut and take that money and reinvest it in a Chinese corporation. So now our private industries are very much, in some cases, more invested in foreign interests than in our own national interests. And so we're actually perpetuating our debt and our economic bonds to these countries that we want to be, I suppose, some people would say, more independent from. So that's why it doesn't work, because we are assuming that the corporations want for the good of the people, but they want for themselves in most cases, which is understandable. Some would say that you can't blame them for it, but it's just how it works. So the next logical question is, there has to be a way to reduce the national debt and to get the effects that are desired from trickle-down economics, but have it actually work in a realistic situation. And some people say that they have the answer to that, so I thought it would just be an interesting thing to interject here. There is something called demand side economics, which is that you take the money that you would in supply side economics invest in the very wealthy, and you invest it in the middle class, so that the corporations and all the people who are very high up on the economic ladder, they don't have the same tax cuts that they would get before, so their product doesn't necessarily change, but the money that the middle class has to spend is drastically increased, and that money will reinvigorate the economy and get people buying again, and then they can take that money that they get from the extra taxes, and it would work the same way, except it eliminates the trickle down. In some ways, it assumes that the wealthy don't need a cut of the stream, I guess. They already have enough water. But that is what I took away from my little bit of extra research into supply side economics and Reaganomics, and why it isn't necessarily the best application of our resources. Which is a little bit interesting also, how we already know from past experience that it doesn't work the way that we want it in an ideal situation, yet it is still a main staple of the economic policy of the Republican Party, and then the Democratic Party has more of a demand side economics platform. But yep, so that's my video for this week.